So you've got a much cooler headset than me because I don't even use one. But mate, you're looking very gamer there, Brodie. We're going to talk about that in a minute because you haven't always been just a drag racer. But I'm not even going to try and guess what kind of games that you played. Firstly, whereabouts are you now? I know you're going to say you're home, but where's that?
I'm in the front room, so this is where I spent most of my time throughout my high school days playing video games of all different sorts on my Xbox. And I used to have a driving sim just there that I used to play Forza with the likes of the McClure boys and Luke Viersma and a couple others from around the track as well.
So you have turned corners in your sim games, just not in
Yes,
your real life.
yes, yeah. I've done lots of circuit racing online, but unfortunately not very much in person.
It's funny because Phil Reed always tells me that if you can turn a corner, you're not going fast enough. So that's how he justifies that I'm a sprint car and speedway guy. And he's like, mate, if you can turn a corner, you're not going fast enough. So anyway,
Yeah, my
what?
boss does tarmac rally, and I say the same thing.
Well, I mean, yeah, okay, no argument there. Wonderful to have your company, everybody. I know it's a bit later than we normally do this on the deep end, but because it's a West Australian time difference and all that good stuff, this is our way of being able to accommodate the West Aussie viewers as well, because that's where a lot of Brodie's fan base is, and certainly where, although I got to say, the Zappia fan base extends right across Australia, bro, because I know that Zap's got thousands of fans across Australia. So I'm sure you're looking to build on that fan base as well. Whereabouts in WA do you live?
Yep. What's that? Sorry, you've just
Whereabouts in WA do
um
you live?
cut out then. Say again. I'm in North Perth, so only 5 minutes north of the CBD. John's workshop is based south of the river in Bibra Lake.
Hmm.
So it's right in between where I live and where the track is. So it's in a convenient location for both of those.
So explain to the audience tonight, although a lot of the NDRC page people will know exactly who you are and your family history, but explain who the Zappias are and why perhaps they are considered as icons in West Australian and Australian motor racing.
So I'm John's nephew. Uncle John's obviously raced for a lot of years now, dating back to, I think it's 45 years was this year's milestone.
Yep.
Raced many times in Ravenswood and around Australia. He was a part of the first Top Doorslammer challenge. I believe it was 95 when he had that famous video of mowing the lawn. Um, and then from there, he's just, built up, gotten another car, and he's made his name and set records and gone overseas and set records, which one was recently just broken the other week.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, he is Zappia Racing. That is who John is. And um, I used to travel around with my mum Leah and dad Richard, who's been helping him out for over 20 years, probably closer to 30 now. Um, and when I was younger, it was just that's what I wanted to do. That's who I wanted to be. And I used to aspire to, drive a door slammer and be like Uncle John. Um, I remember I used to race BMX from like 6 through to about 8.
Yep.
And when I turned 8, my parents gave me the option to race go-karts or to race juniors. And I chose to race juniors and be like Uncle John because that's what I wanted to do.
Wow. And Junior Dragster has been such a phenomenal gateway to so many great drag racing individuals over the years. Tell me about your time in Junior Dragster.
I first started out in junior drag start in November 2013, so 11 years this month.
Wow.
We started leasing a car off a close friend of ours, Pete Matulovic, and I did my licensing and was already going too fast for the class at the time. By the time we'd finally slowed the car down, got licensed, I'd done all right in my first season. I'm pretty sure my second or third event I got runner up and ended up winning my fifth event that I'd ever raced, and that was all at 8 years old. So I was pretty stoked with that. Then my parents made the decision that we were going to go to Darwin and Alice Springs in July to race the Nitro Up North event and the Desert Nationals. I believe this was only the second time that those events had been run. So there was no points in Darwin, but we just went up because it was on the way
Yeah.
to Alice Springs, and it proved to be a good thing because I actually won the event. Um, I beat the ex-Australian champion at the time, Braden Naylor, in the final.
Oh wow.
And then, yeah, from there, I just, continued out throughout the years, stepped up to B junior at 11, got a new car towards the end of B's, stepped up to A when I turned 13, and then I really started to, have some successful seasons once I stepped into my newest car, sorry. Um, and yeah, I ended up winning three WA state championships in a row. And I come runner up, not so, sorry, not runner up, third in the Australian Championship 1 year, and then I won the next year. Believe it was 22 that I won. Yeah, 21, 22 that I won the Australian Championship.
How much did Dad like tinkering with the junior dragster? Was that something?
So from that point, it was like, well, where to next? I was on the cusp of aging out. My birthday's in August,
Yep,
and the only time I could race before my birthday was in oh,
you're good.
the only time that I could race before my 17th birthday was in Darwin or Alice Springs in June, July. So we made the trip to Alice Springs and I raced again and I won that event to allow me to continue in juniors. And then it was only a month or two later that we found a car in Adelaide that had come up for sale, which was the Camaro that I'd raced for a few years. Um, After a few conversations with Uncle John back and forth about where he was, because he was traveling from Alice to Adelaide and somewhere around that area at the time, and the truck was stationary there, so it was either now or never to bring the car back from Adelaide. We decided to just go for it and to call my time on juniors there. We sold the car to close friends of ours, the Wagners, who are still
Hmm.
campaigning that car, and they had it in Perth this weekend, actually, last weekend racing. And from there, I stepped into my uncle's VP Street Ute, which ran around the 970s, 980s, while I prepared the Camaro to race in Super Sedan. And then I finally brought the Camaro out in December 2022, and yeah, top qualified my first event and ran an 8:57, I believe it was, at 257 kilometers an hour in my first event in the Camaro. So that was a good little step up out of juniors to introduce me into the big leagues, you could say.
So, how much did fun did Dad have tinkering with junior dragsters? I imagine he would have been like the mad professor, like he is with the rap. What was he like with the junior dragster?
He was pulling his hair out all the time. He always said that tuning a junior is 10 times harder than tuning a door slammer because we don't have the problem of how do you get it to go faster. We had the problem of how do you get them to slow down.
Yeah.
Obviously, with juniors, you've got your different age categories and you've got ET and speed restrictions that you're not allowed to go faster than. And the problem was that most of the cars are a lot lighter or have a lot more power, or, if the weather changes or if the wind is blowing behind you by 5 kilometers an hour, it'll change your ET. And that was the bit that did my dad's head in. So from from the time I was racing C and B, he was really getting a grip on how to get these cars to work how they should. Then when I turned 13, I took over a lot of the maintenance and
Yep.
the work on the car, and then it came to a point when I was about 15, 16 that I was doing pretty much everything on the car apart from starting it and bringing myself into stage. Um, but I definitely learned a lot from my dad and a lot of other people in the junior community about how these cars work, how to set up the clutches, and what you need to do to the motors to get them to do what they need to do. So it was definitely a good learning experience for me, especially like working on the motors, like taking them to
Yeah.
Aaron Deary, and he showed me how you machine a block and um, relap valves in and gap piston rings and all that stuff. So I'd never done before. He was the first person to show me how to do all of that on my junior motor. So um, it was definitely a big learning experience. That's how I can take it, and it was one of the best things I reckon I could have done.
Great that you bring up Aaron Deary. He's the current Winter Nationals top fuel motorcycle champion. What a moment that was. But his wifey Paige was your backup girl the other night. That is such a great, the way that the world turns.
Yeah, it's awesome. And Aaron's been very heavily involved with getting my car back up and running as well. We had a discussion at a pub nearby in probably August this year, and he asked me, so what's going on for crew with the door slammer? Because at this point, not many people knew about the car. And I said, well, I've got the guys that I had last year and maybe one or two extras, but there was no real like door slammer experience there, aside from obviously John and his crew, but they were going to be
Yeah.
busy with his car. So Aaron said, well, how about I come around a few nights a week and oversee a few things and just help you out and get the car ready. And then Aaron ended up spending almost every single night after work and most weekends at the workshop helping get the car back together because there was a big process in getting that car ready to race.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, he's been helping tune, giving me advice, just everything in between, helping service the car. He's been a massive asset to the team, as well as the rest of the crew.
Yeah.
Because Aaron's actually stepped away from riding the nitro bike this season. Benny's focusing on
Hmm.
a one bike team this year. So Aaron's taken the opportunity to step away from there and kind of just focus his energy on the door slammer. So it's been really good, and to have the whole family involved, like Paige as well, backing me up, and
Yeah.
um, Paige's young bloke Tyler actually had a win at the Golden State. So the feeling in the crew, like the whole camp, was pretty good that weekend.
It's you're coming into the sport at a really exciting time, bro. Like I think Russell Taylor just picked up the points lead after coming away from the Goldens, but Lisa Gregorini is second in the points right now. Last year was the battle of three rookies plus Uncle Zap. It's a phenomenal time for you to come into the game. The cool bit is you don't have to relearn these cars. Like the big thing with your Uncle Zap in the last year and a half has been him relearning these cars and leaving the line. You don't have all of that back history to have to relearn, do you? It's all what you learn now is what you know and what's current.
Yeah, that's it. So my last season in Supercharged Outlaws was pretty well the same as what I'm doing now. Roll in on the foot brake and stop, trans brake in, foot to the floor, let go. It's just a lot faster now when I let go. But that whole process of staging the car and leaving the start line is all pretty well the same. That I had the opportunity to learn that last year,
Right.
and I guess you could say in Super Sedan as well, leaving on the top bulb with a delay box is pretty similar to leaving off a Pro Tree. You just have to sit there and wait a little bit longer.
That has probably been the one Achilles heel with Zap in the last year and a half is his start time. Just
Yeah,
leaving the line and relearning. I mean, and he's been doing it a certain way for 40 plus years, and then
yeah.
suddenly everything changes. So it's been a big learning curve for him as well.
Yeah, and I think it's just been the fact that it's inconsistent rather than it's not like it's every single time he was cutting a bad light. It was
Mm.
sometimes he could pull out like an 013 or an 026 or something of the sort, and then there'd be other times where he'd sit there for half a second and it's just what went wrong. And we could never really pinpoint it. But I think now that he's had, as many bad reaction times as he has, he's really had to put a lot of thought and time into his start line procedure and leaving the start line. And last weekend, for example, he did a really good job with all of his lights being under point 0.1 in eliminations. So hopefully that's showing what's to come, and hopefully that consistency can stay as well because that's what you need now. Everyone's caught up, the technology's there, everyone's running 60s, some people are dipping into the 50s, and most people are running in this like everyone is so much faster than what they were a couple of years ago. So you've got to be, you can't be giving away tenths of a second on the start line. So
Mm.
yeah, he's got his stuff together at the last meeting. So hopefully that can continue out for the rest of the season and just continue to improve and keep getting better.
When you say into the 60s, he's literally into the 60s. I mean, he's been around this game a long time now as a man. He is so ferociously competitive. Like
Yeah.
anything but a win is not acceptable. And I think the crew, they're well aware of his passion. Like he's not scared to pull the shoots on some of them when things don't go right. Do you have that similar competitiveness that you are so single-minded with, or at the moment are you still sort of just finding your way?
I'm definitely still finding my way, but I've always had that competitive nature about me. I don't think I would have gotten where I have now without having that competitive nature to kind of like, no, I do want to win. I want to go that extra mile.
Yeah.
I want to put in the extra few hours tonight so that I don't have to do it tomorrow. So I can put in another extra hours tomorrow and get everything ready. Like last season for me was probably one of the hardest seasons. Well, it was the hardest season I've ever had with engine rebuilds and chutes ripping off and traveling, like driving over to Adelaide and back for my licensing. Like I had a massive season and I was doing that at just 18 with a couple of mates of mine.
Yeah.
Um, the amount of late nights and weekends that we spent there, and I don't think I'd slept properly for that whole year, um, just to get the car to the track for the next round so that you could keep the sponsors happy. And then, something else happens. So then it's pull it all apart, rebuild it all again, buy all these new parts, get it all ready in time, and then you're thrashing the midnight horrors overnight to try and get it ready for the next day to race. Um, if I didn't have that competitive drive, I don't think I would have done any of that. It would have just been, oh well, we'll fix it when I get time. So I think that is a part of the reason why Uncle John decided to give me the opportunity that he has, is he saw what I did last year and how I overcame all the challenges that I had and how I didn't give up. Even at the Western Nationals, when had the whole motor apart overnight, trying to fix whatever was left of it and feed secondhand parts and used parts and scab parts from over here, to get out there with only a few seconds to go before my competitor fired their car up. It was times like that where I personally feel like he's seen that and gone, okay, maybe he does
Want it.
have it in him to put the
Yep.
work in. So that's what I tell myself anyway, is that that's part of the reason why I've been given the opportunity. And I want to show to him that
Yeah.
I have what it takes to drive one, to do the maintenance that's needed, to work on one, to run the whole program. Because at the end of the day, that's what I'm aiming to do. Is everyone knows that he's not going to be in the car forever. Um, how many years he has left, no one really knows. But whenever he does decide that it's time for him to part ways from actually driving the car, I want to make sure that he knows that there's someone there that's got the passion and the drive that he does to keep the legacy going and keep
Yeah.
Zappia Racing alive and continue to do what he's done.
So we know he's got the A and the B and the C motor. Does the B motor now stand for Brodie? Maybe that's the way it works from now on, right? The Brodie motor.
No, so I've got the C motor in my car at the
Okay.
moment. That's so he's got the A and the B motor in his truck for his car, and I'm using the C motor. Which there's nothing wrong with the C
No,
motor.
no.
It's just not all the newest technology that he's got in his motor. He does have another A motor that he's currently fixing up that's been down and out for just almost a year now.
Yep.
So once that gets fixed up, he'll have three motors, and we've got another few bits and pieces on the way so that I can assemble another motor for my car that I can have ready. So there's definitely things in place to start getting some more spares and some more go fast parts behind my car. But you've also got to remember that we got the car finished at midnight the night before the test and tune, and then it's been a week turnaround to the next meeting, and then there was 3 weeks to the Golden States. Now we've got 2 weeks to our next local meeting in Perth. Um, so we haven't really had the time to, sit down and work out what needs to be ordered and what we have and don't have. It's just been go, 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 get the cars done. So
Welcome to the big game, mate. Welcome to
yeah,
the big game, bro.
that's
It has
it.
been the last 3 years have been just mega for Doorslammer. I know that there's been some golden eras over the years, and Zap has been a part of all of those.
Yeah,
But for me personally, the last couple of years in particular have just been off the charts. Like amazing ETs, incredible qualifying sessions, like the emergence of Lisa Gregorini, Ronnie Palumbo, Russell Taylor, like winning the championship in his rookie year. There's been some phenomenal things,
yeah.
and there's Zap in the corner going, he's like the Mike Tyson. He's like, no, I'm not done yet. So, and even Pete Kapiris being, back now after having his dirt bike incident. Now, over the corner, over your shoulder, is a great picture of this really nice lady that you're hugging, who was madly cleaning the lounge room before we got started with this. That would the back didn't look like that about 10 minutes ago. Tell me about her and tell me about the picture of the boat and what's going on there.
Well, yeah, in the photo of mum and myself, that's when I had blonde hair when I was probably about 2 years old, I would say. Um, mum, and then the speedboat is my grandpa George, who is my
Yep.
mum's dad.
Yep.
George unfortunately passed away in 2011, and well, he left behind a decent amount of money towards the betterment of my life more so.
Yeah, right.
Um, so I was very fortunate that my parents chose to spend that money on taking me drag racing around the country.
Yep.
So my grandpop is pretty well the sole reason why we were able to do what we did and travel Australia drag racing and buying the junior and racing as much as we did. Um, Without him, I wouldn't have been able to do any of that. I would have still been probably would have still been the kid on the sideline watching Uncle John going, wow, I wish that'd be me one day. So I owe all of my junior years to him. Um, and then yeah, from then on, once I stepped out of the junior and we sold up, we used all of the money that we had left to go towards buying the Super Sedan Camaro. And then from there, that was kind of like, that's it. That's that's done now. It's up to me. So I got a job the year that we bought the Camaro. I started my apprenticeship as a CNC machinist.
Yep.
So that whole year I was saving up, saving up, so that by the end of the year I could spend some money on the car and get it up to scratch and get it out on track. Um, I did that and got my license in Super Sedan in the U, like I said before. Come out in the Camaro, and then by the time I'd finished in Super Sedan, I'd stacked up a few pretty decent sponsors at the time, like
Yep.
JK Construction. I was actually speaking to Luke on the phone earlier, and we were just reminiscing on how I met him at a Christmas Eve party 2 years ago now when his company had only just started and I'd only just started in Super Sedan and how he supported me then and now he's still supporting me now up in the door slammer and he just said it's amazing to think 2 years ago he was chatting to a 17-year-old about this car that he's been 260 kilometers an hour in and now he's talking to a 19-year-old about this car that he's going almost 400 kilometers an hour in. Um, so yeah, that it's the amount of support and backing that I've had from numerous people and sponsors and everyone has just been insane from both last year with the Camaro. Um, to do what I did in that season wouldn't have been possible without the plethora of sponsors that I had. As you could see, as it was like the coloring inboard, the car, it was just
Just like
like
uncles. Yep.
yeah, there was logos everywhere, and that's how I was able to do what I did, and I owe that whole last season to every single one of those people on the car.
Yeah, it's not a cheap game, is it?
No, no, I learned that very quickly. It was actually the Golden States last year. I learned that very quickly when I spun my first set of bearings in the big block, and then it was just all downhill from there.
This how does mum go with you racing? I mean, because it can't be easy for her.
I remember I asked her a lot later on in life how nervous she was when I first started when I was 8, and she was pretty blasé about the whole thing. Like she hadn't done much research into juniors. We were just leasing the car, so it was kind of like, oh, there you
Yep.
go, like you'll be fine, jump in it. She's seen me do my first full track pass and seen 89 kilometers an hour come up on the timing board, and she's gone, oh, that's a bit faster than I thought. Like not many people would expect an 8-year old to be able to drive at 90 kilometers an hour, and that was the first real shock for mum, I believe. But then she got used to it, and as you do, things just progress on, and I progressively got faster and more confident. Um, I think the next time that she was the most nervous would have to be when I licensed the
Mm.
Camaro in Outlaws, not in Super Sedan, in
Okay.
Outlaws in
Yep.
Adelaide.
Yep.
There's a few photos of her and dad on the start line. She's run over to dad and squeezed his hand standing behind the start line because no one had any idea what the car was going to do.
Yep.
We'd slapped a Pro Charger on this motor and got it finished the day that we were leaving for Adelaide, and we'd driven all this way over there. We'd broken the tail shaft in the first time out. Put this new tail shaft in that we got made in Adelaide that day, and it was just everyone had everything crossed with that the car was going to go straight, that it was going to
Yep.
actually make it off the start line, that we were going to get the half track, that I was going to do what I had to do. Um, and then once I'd done that first half track pass, I think she'd settled down quite a bit, knowing that everything was under control and everything worked right. Because at that time, it was pretty much it was two teenagers, me and my mate Lockie, who'd
Yep.
put the car together alongside like Uncle John's guidance.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we'd done a majority of the work on that car, um, and then it was all just an unknown. So I remember looking back at those photos of them on the start line, and I've given mum a little bit of like shit for it here and there, like, oh, you were all nervous thinking I was gonna, but I understand it. Like at the end of the day, it was her little boy going down the track,
Yeah.
and in something that she didn't know how it was going to perform. And then the same thing with the door slammer. She's gone up to dad, squeezed his hand on my first licensing pass because, again, the car hadn't been down the track in 16 years. No one had any idea how it was going to go, what it was going to do. It was a completely new setup in the car for that chassis anyway. Um, and it was, another late night thrash together, get everything done. So yeah, mum and dad were definitely a little bit nervous for my first
Hmm.
licensing pass, but after they saw it go down the track and it was tracking pretty nicely, and then on my fourth pass down the track, my first full track pass to run 588 at 389 kilometers an hour. I think all the nerves were gone by then. There's a video of mum dancing on the start line and running off the track, so I think everything was all good after that.
A few people saying that we've got that it's glitching a little bit with the net, but don't worry because we're recording this as well separately. So if we need to, then what I'll probably do is have it put up on as a separate video file. So for anyone that's concerned about the Facebook output of it, don't worry, we're recording this. Where do you get a sense of the speed, bro? Is it at the other end when the chutes come out? Is it when you leave the line? Or where are you realizing I'm in the fives here?
For me, it's definitely when the timing comes back in around 2 seconds into the run, just about I don't know, I'd say just before 3:30. Um, that for me was the biggest shock because during my licensing, I had everyone telling me, oh, watch out, be careful for this. You're going to know you're alive, like something along those lines, like pretty much just be ready for this. I've left the start line for the first time and gone to 60 foot, and I've thought to myself, that's not as bad as what everyone was making it out to be.
Yep.
Um, I'd been 105 last year in the Camaro to 60 foot, and I went 100 my first pass in the door slammer. So it was only really five hundredths difference. So I didn't
Yep.
notice much at the time. It was then after my 100 foot pass, I was like, oh, it still felt pretty well the same. When I went to half track though, and the motor revs up past 8,000 RPM and you're grabbing gears, it's like, okay, this is what everyone's talking about. This is completely different to last year now. And I still remember that half track pass. The car had picked the front wheels up and it was slightly going right, and I've slightly come off the throttle to try and bring the wheels down, and then wheels have come down, steer it back into the groove, and put your foot back down again. Um, that was the first sense of, oh yeah, now I know why everyone raves on about driving these things. So after that pass, I thought that that was my test day up. That was at 4:20 in the afternoon. We were told you had to be in the lanes at 5 to get another run. So I was under the assumption that, all right, that's it. Like we've had a good day and we'll come out next meeting and try and go for the full track. Um, the guys come and pick me up at the top end and they say, John just said, hurry back now. We're going to get it turned around. I'm like, okay, don't know how we're going to do that in 35 minutes, but we hurried back, got it turned around and got out to the lanes on time. Um, and I knew rolling through the tunnel that it was kind of now or never. Like I couldn't really do another half track pass because that'd be a waste of a pass. Um, I already knew that I could get to half track. The only thing I had to do was just hold my foot down for another 2 seconds. So that's exactly what I did. I've gotten to half track and I'm thinking to myself, I'm found after half track, I find the chute lever, and it's just get ready to pull them, go through the finish line, off the throttle, pull the chutes. And we knew that off the half track that I'd run before that it was going to be a 580 something. So I had the idea in my head that it was going to be a 5.8 something. And then, yeah, the guys come around the top end and tell me it was a 588. And it was a surreal feeling. Like to run in the 80s in my first full track pass was it was a pretty cool feeling. It was well, I think it would have to be one of the fastest, definitely not the fastest licensing pass, but one of. I remember Russell Taylor ran a
Mhm.
570 something in his licensing,
In
but
Sydney. Yep.
yeah. But yeah, to get it done in four passes and to have Andrew sign me off and say that I was done and have fun at the next meeting was pretty cool.
One of the most iconic shots every time is the shot of the striker crushing Monaro coming underneath the tunnel as it sort of sits so low to the ground and comes straight at the camera. But the shot that I really love is when your dad is crouched down and bringing him up to the beam. I think that's the thing I love. I love the people in this game, Brody. You know, it's the human stories. It's your dad and his brother kicking
Yeah.
ass out there. It's Russell and Hammy and Stu Rowland. It's Daniel and Lisa. You know, it's Peter and Jeff Cuttajar. It's all those guys and girls and how they just live and breathe. The moment you get to see when you guys come to the lights goes like that. It's the hours and hours and hours to get you there.
Yeah, and it's the feeling of, rolling into pre-stage and you stop on the break and you have that deep breath and you think to yourself, right, this is what you've worked so hard for and this is what everyone's put in all their time and effort and money for and um it's in your hands now. No one else can do anything to help you but you. Like it's at that moment as you're about to roll into full stage that you realize that all of it rests on your shoulders and it's like it's your life in your hands and it's the results are on you pretty much. So it's that feeling of like adrenaline as you roll into full stage, knowing that you're the only one in control and there's except if, you leak oil and the starter goes, no, turn the car off.
Yeah,
Other than
yeah.
that, um, yeah, you're the only one that has any control over the situation and that feeling of of freedom, I guess, is pretty cool for the five and a bit seconds that you get it.
So this moment has been something you've dreamed about for pretty well forever.
Yeah.
But one of your very first memories was actually of Zap at Willowbank when you were just a baby, yeah?
Yeah, my earliest memory that I can remember back to is John having his accident at Willowbank when I was 3. Um, I can't remember much of it, but I just remember, being in the stands at about half track where it happened, um, watching the car climb the wall, come back down. I remember mum was yelling, screaming. She was a little bit nervous. And then back at the pits, all I can remember was Uncle John swearing profusely about what had happened and acting it out with his hands. And
No.
I just remember looking at mum going, he's swearing because obviously I was 3. Um, but yeah, that was one of my first memories of drag racing and being at the drags. Other than that, like walking into the pits and having all the crew go, oh, hey, Brodie, like I'd come in ready to chalk the wheelie bar and polish the bonnet because those were my two set out jobs that I had to do.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it's just the people aspect, like you say, all the crew surrounding the car and the family and everyone at the track, just it makes the whole environment feel so welcoming. And as I've grown up around it, I think um, my personality has come a lot from the people that I've surrounded myself with as well. Um, so I can't thank all the people that have crewed for John over the years and, the people that have involved themselves. And they're the reason that I've turned out to be who I am. And like we've now got old time supporters like Craig Pedley from Striker, who used to support John back in the day. He's now come back on board and he's now sponsoring me with his other company, Max Plant. So that's another kind of full
Ah.
circle moment to have Craig sponsoring that car again. Um, so yeah, it's been a fun journey, I guess you could say, throughout the years.
So clearly you've been watching the way that Zap services sponsors. I mean, he's known from my side of things, and don't panic about the glitching, folks, because we're recording this separately on Zoom, and we'll replay the file later. Whenever we go for an interview, he wants to manipulate where the camera is. He's like, "Oh, I've got to get this sponsor behind us here, and we've got to get like he very much knows the value of sponsor relationships."
Yeah, and that was another big thing with this weekend as well was we had all the magnets on the tow car only finished the morning of race day. We had another one of the big banners finished with Max Plant and all the other new major sponsors that we've gained this year on another banner, and they only just got finished the morning of race day. So there was a big push from John to get our signage guy, Click Creative, to get all of that finished, and I've a lot of thanks to Jeremy from Click for getting all of that done on time. But yeah, that's one of the biggest things is these people are the reason why we can do what we do, and they're the reason why we can bring two cars to the track and race as hard as we do, knowing we can, go and service the motor and we'll have enough parts and enough resources to keep the cars going throughout the year. Um, Without those guys, we wouldn't be doing any of that. So we need to make sure that they're getting the most value for money. And I've started to tune in on what John does to,
Hmm.
accommodate his sponsors, and I'm trying to learn to do the exact same thing. Um, for example, like the photo that I got with the Burson's Auto Parts representative with my Christmas tree at the end of the track, we stood either side of the door, and I was trying to move away from certain signs so that we could get everyone in. Um, but it's the little things that people take notice of, and you want to keep your sponsors. Obviously, you want to keep them happy, but you want to give them a reason to come back. Um, and we had quite a few sponsors in the pits last meeting, and we've had some pretty positive feedback from them saying that they enjoyed the weekend. They loved it. They loved seeing what went on and the camaraderie and seeing how well everything worked. And even though we had troubles on both cars over both days, um, the way that everything was sorted out and we never gave up and we came back and kept trying, like they had nothing but good things to say. And that's how you keep those types of people is you need to give them a reason to want to come back. Um, so that's what I'm trying to do now is just, keep everyone happy and do the best I can as well as um, you know, supporting the people who support me.
So the body stylings in Top Door Slammer are not leading edge, right? They're very much there's a few, wild looking Corvettes and things like that, but they are more the 68 Camaro, the Pontiacs, the Monaros, things like that, Saratogas, and yet they're still so incredibly relevant to the audience. Why is Top Door Slammer such a popular product, Brody, do you think?
I think it's just well, for us, it's the familiarity of a HQ Monaro. These are cars that people used to be able to see on the roads, and for a lot of the older fans that have been watching John for years, they'll see, the HQ Monaro come out with the blue and red stripes up them, and oh, I used to remember when he raced this car back in Ravenswood in 19 whatever.
Hmm.
Um, and it's a feeling of familiarity for people, and that's what I think makes them so intriguing now. Um, Back, you could say in the heyday of Door Slammer back in pre 2015 days when the Andrew Pro Series was still happening. Um, you would have, all your cars were clutch cars, and you'd be bringing up the RPM coming into stage on the brake, and stopping full stage, and then the big flash of RPM as they're up on the stall, and then like long ratio gearboxes so that you could slip the clutch throughout first gear, and it was so much more of a driver's class than obviously the technology's advanced and we've
Yep.
taken advantage of that, but back then they were really drivers' cars, and I think that put on a real good show for the crowd because they were always wild and unexpected. You'd always see them like crossed up doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and like for John even you'd have from the center line to the wall back to the center line and he'd still run a five something, and that was just like people were amazed. It was how did he track over 1400 feet and still run a five? Like watching the way that those cars acted, and they just have so much attitude, you could say. Um, Definitely provided a good spectacle for people to watch, and I think that's why they were so exciting at the time. They obviously weren't the fastest things out there. You've always had your nitro cars, your top fuel, and your nitro funny car, but um, yeah, they were very unpredictable, and they always knew how to put on a great show.
Now you've got a year until November again. So you know where I'm going with this because I'm gonna say it's gonna take you a while to rock a really cool like 1980s spec John Zappia Mo, but some of the artwork I've seen come out was that with the big Australian cricket team, Viva Zapata. You're going to have to, and I'll give you a year, all right, and then you got to get your Movember game strong, okay?
I reckon I'm going to need a little bit more than a year. The old facial hair follicles haven't quite kicked in just yet.
Surely with a name like Zappia, mate, you should be able to just grow one like that.
Maybe half of it will grow up nicely. The other half will need to take a little bit of time.
What do you have on your schedule left? Like what are you running? Where are you running next and for how long this season?
So our Perth season's only really just started at the Motorplex. The Our grand opening was 3 weeks before the Golden States. So I got my license on the 27th of October at our test and tune. Then a week later was our opening round. The Golden States is like our round two. So we've got round three coming up on the 7th of December for our SummerSlam series. Then there's another round of the Blown Alcohol All Stars, which incorporates Top Doorslammer in it on the 27th of December, which John and I won't be running at because it's Christmas time. I'll probably be going away and he's got stuff planned. Um, then we've got another round of NDRC on the 4th of January next year. Then there's another round of Blown Alcohol All Stars on the 18th of January, only 2 weeks after that. Then we have a nice 6 week break where we can, sort out a few things, get some spare parts, and maybe have a rest from going to the workshop every day. Before we have the Western Nationals come up again, which will be another NDRC round. That's the third one in Perth.
Hmm.
Then to close out our SummerSlam series, 3 weeks after that, we've got our SummerSlam Grand Final, March 22nd, I believe. Um, and then there's one more event in April, which I can't quite remember the date, which will be a blown alcohol round. But whether we make it to that or not, I'm not certain
Okay.
because we're going to be traveling to the Bend in April for the start, well, at the start of April. So that last Perth round is a hit and miss whether we do that or not. It's not contributing towards our particular championship. But if we've got the time and the cars are ready, and if it doesn't clash with Adelaide, then we'll run that. After Adelaide, we'll go to Sydney for the Nitro Champs, and then after that, it's to the Winter Nationals in Willowbank.
Shout out to Kelvin Lyle too, because Kelvin's been a great supporter of Door Slammer, the series back in the West as well. So yeah, he's such a groovy cat, Kelvin. I love it. He's just so he
Yeah,
doesn't like the media, he doesn't like any of the spotlight. He's very much like Russell Taylor in that way. He'd prefer to fly under the radar. And Kelvin has invested a lot back in the sport, which is super cool to see him continue to support Door Slammers in WA.
yeah, it's been awesome. And Kelvin actually came down to the pits on the weekend too, and had a walk through, and we had a quick chat. So it's still good to see him at the track and enjoying himself and yeah, supporting the door slammers in Perth. It's really awesome, and we all thank him a lot for what he's putting back into the sport.
So are you relieved that the first one's out of the way?
Um, I guess you could say that. I wouldn't really say I was nervous for the first one. Um, I was more so just excited and wanting to get out there and get my feet wet. Um, Yeah, I'm just looking forward to the next time I can get in the car. It's just the whole feeling around the weekend and being at the track, and it's just a great feeling. I don't really think I'm as nervous as what I used to be when I was racing Group 3 because you don't have the whole breakout aspect, you don't have the whole
Oh
handicap
yeah.
thing. Like
Yeah.
it's good to just roll up to the start line, go into stage, and then just leave as soon as you see a flash of yellow and hope you get to the other end first. It's a completely different way of racing than what I'm used to, and Ronnie Palumbo would be the same coming from,
Yeah.
bracket racing for many years, jumping into the door slammer. Um, it's it's just completely different. It's awesome, and you don't have the same amount of nerves. I guess you're more nervous that the car's going to make it off the start line, or you're more weary about how it's going to react down the track rather than how you're going to go because you don't have as many variables to go wrong, and you don't have to worry about waiting to see the next car and backing off or making
Yeah.
sure you're in front or anything like that. It's just leave the start line as fast as you can and get down there as fast as you can.
And no eliminations either in National Drag Racing Championship. It's like an all-run format, apart from when you get to the A, B, C, D final thing, then it's game on. But that's
Yeah.
another thing that will just give you more laps, bro, because at the moment, what you need is seat time, right?
Yeah, that's it. And I've only done I think it was 7 full track passes coming into this meeting.
Hmm.
So, oh, not even that. I think I'd done 7 passes, including my licensing coming into this meeting. So all of it's just seat time. The fact I even made it to the A final was just by pure chance. Um, like I know that if John didn't bang the blower, he would have been the one in the A final, and I would have been in the B final, just by the way that the points worked. But unfortunately, he had his mishap, and that tied us on points. Um, but yeah, I wasn't coming into the Golden States expecting anything. Like I was running 590s and I dipped into the 580s, run another
Yeah.
584 in the final. But I knew beforehand that I didn't have anything to really take to Russell as long as we both left the start line, and as long as he didn't sit there for a second, that he was gonna have the win pretty easily. So I did the best I could, and we're still finding our feet with the car. We're still learning where it can take power and where it can't, and we've had we had quite a few issues with the car actually turning very hard right off the start line on Friday qualifying. So we were doing everything we can to overcome that, and obviously you put more power in the car, and it's going to keep going the way that it wants to go. So we were kind of holding off doing that until we had the car going straight, because it's a lot easier, or it's a lot better to run a 590 going straight down the track than try and run a 570 something and be all over the track sideways and backing off and pedaling. So we kind of pulled out the smart game plan and just keep the power level where it was at and just get down the track rather than really chase after it. But there's plenty of time for that. We've got a lot of rounds the golden for the Western Nationals, sorry. So we'll slowly chip away at it, and I'll slowly get better, and the crew will slowly mesh a lot better, and we'll get there. We're still new, so
Yeah, you are. You're still new. Your dad and your uncle might have been around for 1,000 years, but you haven't. Mate, I'm so excited to have you in the game. It's such a great time for Door Slammer. I said the last 18 months, 2 years in particular, it's just been off its chops. So I can't wait to actually get to call your stuff for the next round that we're together, which will probably be around the bend or
I believe
Nitro.
that's Western Nationals you'll be
Yeah,
coming
March.
over, I
That's
believe.
right, March 1 to 3. Yeah, cannot wait for that Mac Track Western Nationals. Mate, it's cool to have you in the game. I'm glad that some people are supporting you. I'm sure the merch is going to pick up as well. And what a great story for Australian motorsport. You've got a husband and wife team racing against each other. You've got an uncle and a nephew now racing as well. There are so many great stories in this sport. Get back to the workshop. You've got no time to hang out in the lounge room and eat mum's lasagna. You got to get back to that race car. Thanks so much for being part of the deep end. And don't worry, I'm going to show the Zoom edited version of this if people have been having problems with the internet output. So I apologize for that, but we'll get it sorted. It's good to see you, bro. It's
No, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it.
going to be good fun, mate. We're going to catch up a lot this year. Have a great night, everybody. Don't worry, we'll put up this rehashed, re-edited version of it very soon so you can share that one. Say hi to mum for me, and I'll look forward to seeing you at the next track, mate.
I look forward to seeing you too, mate. Thank you.
See you, bro.